In this video, we are talking about the culture war. Is it winding down? Is it kind of waning? Or is it ramping up? Are you personally tired of the culture war? Or are you all in it to win it and you're revved up and fired up for the culture war? That's the topic of today's show on OG55. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG55. We got producer Dre in the house to discuss the culture war, the state of the culture war. But before we dive into that, Dre, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Yes, allow me to dispense with the pleasantries. You can go ahead and best place to find me is going to be at VashSky right there at Twitter right there. Just go ahead and type that in. Should pop up for, as Christine Waysons McCarthy would say, for all the robust discussion right there. And the best place to see me is going to be on the channel you're watching right now at OG55, where we have some amazing shows like Citrus Corner, Orange Nerd, Story Geeks with Jay, and my own Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Now, yes, if you see there, we got Orange Grove 55 and Orange Grove 55 over there. What is going on there? Well, I was actually on some channels promoting this one right here, so that's why you have a little title right there. So please excuse me, OG. Don't mean to take the moniker. Just wanted to go ahead and promote a little bit. But I am excited to be back home base.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you did record with WW Pro, if you want to let the folks home know like the topic and maybe when that might release so they know to check it out.
Yes, we just actually recorded a video talking about Universal Europe, and hey, maybe there's a new park coming to Germany. Maybe we found some concept art. Well, you'll have to watch the video and see. It's a fascinating process here because I had heard about Universal Europe. I had heard that Germany might be related. I had heard that maybe they Universal might make an announcement this year, but to actually see some stuff and actually speculate on what is actually coming is very, very fun and very, very interesting. So please go ahead and check that out. Also recorded another video with Pro that you definitely have to check out. So head on over there after this video, of course, and check out Pro's channel because there's some remarkable insight in the theme park space and in the studio space and pop culture space. So definitely check that out.
Check it out. All right, so let's dive into the culture war. This has been raging now for years. It's actually become kind of a big deal on YouTube in particular.
Yes.
On Twitter, of course. But Dre, let's start off like, where are we at right now? Like with the culture war, like where do you see it? Like, is this thing kind of winding down? Is it ramping up? Is it just evolving? Like where are we at right now with this?
I think, and we were talking a little bit pregame, OG, and I think you would describe it as kind of a fork in the road, and I think that is an actual, that's a correct description of where we're at right now, because I think I think the fighters in the culture war, or the let's say the purveyors of this, whether you're fighting for and against either side or whatever, I think they're becoming a little bit fatigued with the whole thing. However, I think the normies are now getting involved in a big way in which they previously weren't. And the reason I say that is because I think when this started affecting their kids, I think that's when a lot of this ramped up to a huge degree. You saw how DeSantis capitalized that in Florida, for example. In this last election, some people were maybe expecting a red wave of some sorts. and we know that didn't quite happen across the board. Happened in some places, not in others. But the thing that did happen nationwide that nobody talked about, the school boards for a lot of districts, whether they were, solid blue or solid red, they all went red, like across the nation. It was actually quite surprising. And so I think as people started to, as certain politicians, certain political parties, certain figures starting to highlight the what was going on at their schools, what was kids were receiving in terms of entertainment. That's when they really starting to get involved in the culture war as we describe it. But for the people who have been fighting the fight, let's say, for a long time, they're a little bit worse for wear, let's say.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting point you bring up there with the normies, actually. I never really considered that. That's interesting, Dre. And my big thing with the culture war is that I think both sides have points. Like, I think, look, does racism exist? Absolutely. The left is absolutely correct. There is racism in the world. There is stuff that maybe, is problematic or whatever. I mean, like, look at the old Betty Boop cartoons, for example, stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hatred exists. So, okay, they're not technically wrong. The right, okay, there is stuff that maybe goes a little too far with the woke stuff, right? And a little just way overboard and all this stuff. And they're not wrong. My big issue is that I think both sides are guilty of this in a big way. When the left goes on these things where like basically everything is racist, it waters down it waters down your core message, right? So
sure.
People tune that out because, okay, here we go again. Another thing is racist, right? But same goes for the right. Everything is woke. So when you say, oh, this Proud Family, it's woke. Okay, even though it might be woke, or even though it might be maybe a little extreme or whatever, people kind of tune it out because, well, the last 8, 9, 10 movies were all woke too, and Encanto was woke, and this is woke. It loses its effectiveness when it's overused, and I think both sides are guilty of this. And I think that's kind of where, like, for me personally, that's kind of where I'm a little bit fatigued with it, because it's like there's no kind of just like analyzing from an intellectual standpoint anymore. It's just everything is just either racist or woke, and it's like it's just a blanket statement, and both sides are doing it. I mean, both sides are doing it like 1,000% ramped all the way up. And that's kind of where I'm at with that. But thoughts on that? Do you kind of see that too, or maybe not from your perspective?
Yeah, there definitely is a lack of nuance. And I guess there has to be for each side, right? And each side needs each other, which is very, very funny. You actually see this in certain points in history. Well, I can't use the names on YouTube, but let's just, say that the 1930s and 40s, for example, right? Let's say that 1930s and 40s, what the Soviet Union people were called and the German people were called. One needed the other in order to, survive and coexist. A very interesting thing that you find out in history. I'm not saying that this situation is at all similar, but it is similar in that, one side's going to claim one thing and the other side's going to claim another all the time, and it's going to get just overpowering, and that's what tunes a lot of people out, right? I mean, in this way, like I said, I mean, once kids started to get involved, that's what really kind of changed the game for everybody, I think, really. But it's fascinating. It's become so kind of ridiculous. There's no, like I said, there's no nuance anymore, right? So I was, doing some research recently about, the MCU and so forth, and kind of tracking its success and maybe a little bit stagnation that's been happening recently. I was going back to some of my favorite films, and one of those is Captain America: Winter Soldier. Love that film. I just love it, right? But if you look into the development of it, Kevin Feige even says it was like a political thriller for him, right? It was like this kind of almost conspiracy, paranoia type thriller, right? And it actually dealt with a lot of almost political, but mostly government issues. That was really profound. It was around the time that Edward Snowden's thing was coming out, right, and all of that, and it hit on some themes that were very very topical in that day that could have potentially been divisive. However, the Russo brothers handled it in such a way that they had universal values, let's say, and principles added to it that everybody could agree on. And so that's what I kind of mean when I say, well, do we have to be nuanced and even depoliticizing things? Because if you do completely, maybe you don't get a Captain America Winter Soldier, right? Maybe the point is not about being political or not, but being divisive or not. So there's some nuance there, even amongst works that people find very very entertaining and really have take delight and pleasure in. Anyway, I wanted to go ahead and share you this article. This was by The Wrap here. And this actually talks about the RCID and so forth, and why Disney gave up the fight, or grounded DeSantis or whatever. There's some spin here, but it goes over basically why didn't they actually launch or like I should say file a lawsuit against DeSantis. Anyway, it says this, and I thought this was interesting for this discussion. Political pragmatism and even concern about how the dispute was affecting the theme parks played a role. According to internal polling obtained by The Wrap, Disney has been losing ground with two key demographics: families with young kids, due to the park's exorbitant pricing, and those over 50, over perceptions of the company's political stances. It says here, Disney finds itself in a complicated quagmire of prior allegiances, internal debates, lost market share, and the fear of reprisal as the media giant faces a changing political landscape. That's the key thing here, and a host of business challenges under returning CEO Bob Iger. It was kind of the first time I had heard a publication actually acknowledge that the political landscape was changing, that we weren't quite in 2020 anymore, we weren't quite in 2016 anymore, right? Yeah. Where this kind of very politically charged wave went through the culture, entertainment, etc., that things were changing. And yes, I understand it's in Florida, and that's a very different environment than some parts of the U.S., but you can kind of feel it, where it was just like this emphasis on certain values that were of the era might not necessarily be as relevant today. And actually companies are responding to this. But before I get to that point, OG, does this making sense to you?
No, it makes total sense to me. And it's actually kind of refreshing. You mentioned like the first time that this has been acknowledged, right? It kind of goes to show how refreshing it is when there's just like kind of like just straight reporting, right? Yeah. Like I get it. There's going to be a little bit of spin in here, but like, sure. But it's not as divisively driven as an article you would have saw maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Like if this was written like 2 or 3 years ago, it would have been DeSantis the monster and Disney's just trying here to be good to the humanity, and right. It was very divisive in nature, and it's refreshing to see some of these trades and what have you kind of get back to like what I was asking for in the beginning of this conversation about. Let's get away from my team, your team. Everything is racist, everything is woke, and let's just analyze things intellectually and fairly. And that's what this article really does for the most part, right? It looks at it and goes,
hey, there's some of that, but not much. Not as much as you think.
Not much as you would think. They're acknowledging, hey, it's a new political environment. DeSantis kind of runs the show here. They're acknowledging things that maybe a left-leaning outlet like The Wrap probably doesn't want to acknowledge, but they're acknowledging it for the sake of honest reporting. And I honestly respect that. And it's refreshing because there's just so much of it out there right now. We both watched Stephanie Janicek, right? Mm-hmm. She's like a mostly Star Wars, YouTuber or whatever. And she's not a lefty at all. I mean, not at all. She rails against the left quite a bit. But lately she's been kind of railing against the right and sort of like this whole, like everything is woke kind of culture too, like on content and what have you. And she's even getting a little tired of it. She's like, hey, I want to analyze Star Wars and I want to analyze it without everything just the blatant, like, it's woke, right? There's some sort of, there's some intellectual honesty that she's kind of hungry for. And I think a lot of people are. And so when I see an article like this and I see that, hey, look, they're looking at it honestly, they're acknowledging DeSantis, you know, it runs the show here and that things are changing in Florida. It's like a breath of fresh air. Oh my God.
Yeah, no, I can concur with that. And to Stephanie's point, I mean, yeah, it would be nice to not talk about how things are let's say woke or racist or whatever. I still have problems with modern entertainment in some ways, right? Because
absolutely,
it's still very, very politically charged, unfortunately, and especially when you can compare it to films even like 10 years ago. It's like, whoa, like
it's a huge difference.
There's a difference, right? But I mean, yeah, I like I said, I think the kind of fighters, let's say, and I think Stephanie was definitely one of them.
Burnt out.
They're a little burnt out, right? Yeah. They're a little burnt out. And well, if you liked this article, OG, for its neutrality, I'm going to take you in the complete opposite direction here. Here we go, Daily Mail, right here. But I want to go ahead and bring this up because it's not just. It's not just us as viewers that are tired of this. Well, it might be the companies too. But go ahead, OG. What we're gonna do? What we're gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna play the.
There you go.
There we go.
I know. Daily Mail. I get it. They're biased, and yes, the language is a little bit. I wouldn't use it. Right? It's not necessarily objective. However, they're one of the only guys actually talking about this. So, well, I gotta go here.
Credit for that.
It says, goodbye anti-bias training. Target, Wells Fargo, and Amazon are among companies ditching woke diversity teams as they cut costs. So this is kind of very interesting. And you can see right here, DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion teams, were shedding about a third of their staff last summer when other departments were only losing about a fifth. So it's this article details how companies looking to cut costs, obviously, with the incoming recession here, unfortunately. Who are they going to cut? Well, they're going to cut these roles, and we'll go into maybe why that is. But you can see some of the bigger companies here. Let me see if I can make this bigger. It's about as big as it's going to get. Target, Capital One, Amazon.com, Applebee's, Wells Fargo, Twitter, Nike, Intel, Wayfair, and Comcast are all in here. Number of outflows. It's quite interesting. But if you go into the bottom here, you can see job openings decline across tech roles. And well, everybody's laying off, as we know very, very well. Says this, DeJarge James, an Atlanta-based DEI professional who was sacked by a ride-sharing firm Lyft in November, says her team's cuts signal how bosses aim to hit profit as many economists eyed a recession in 2023. The multi-billion-dollar DEI industry was delivering poor returns on investment, added James. She spoke of many $250,000 tie-ups with black colleges and other schemes that failed to yield a more diverse and integrated workforce. Quote, you're only throwing dollars at the title and the appropriation of having diverse pipelines, but you're not actually implementing processes in inclusive communities where people can come in and thrive and grow in that environment. James' concerns echo studies of corporate diversity schemes. Sociology scholars Frank Dobbin and Alexandra Kalev, in a 2018 Harvard University paper concluded that such workshops were among, quote, most expensive and least effective in the business world.
And here's the thing too. And Disney will never come out publicly and say they're going to cut from these departments, right? Like the Reimagine Tomorrow team or any of that. They're not going to ever admit that, right? Because there would be a huge backlash from progressives, right?
Right.
But there is going to be a thinning, a minimizing of, I think, progressives at Disney. And there's two big things I think that are at play here. Number one, Bob Iger saying that you have to work in the office. It's not conservatives that are for the most part, against working in the office. It's progressives. So a lot of progressives that work for Disney are going to see that new policy and go, well, you know what? Not for me. I'll work somewhere else, right? you're gonna have some attrition there. You're gonna have some people leaving, and they're gonna be more left-leaning people that are the ones that are gonna be walking out that door for that reason. And
Sure.
also, and we've talked about it in a video recently, Dre, accountability. When Bob Iger says you're accountable executives for how your content does, well, if you're Jennifer Lee or Pete Docter or any of these individuals running these major studios, you might be a progressive, but you're not necessarily going to be so loose with the political stuff infused in the content if you know that, hey, that's going to single out certain segments of the population and even whole countries that won't be able to play these films.
Yeah.
You're going to want to do everything you can to make a film that can be seen by every single person possible. In order to do that, you got to leave a lot of the political stuff out. So I do think that I think Disney's not ever going to become, a conservative company. It's always going to be left leaning. It's Hollywood, but I do think the progressive kind of mindset and a lot of the folks that are progressive at the Walt Disney Company are going to be leaving, and I think it's not going to be the same kind of company that it was 2 and 3 years ago, in my opinion. That's kind of where I'm seeing it.
Well, and one of the reasons why Bob Iger would want to bring people back in the office is to create that kind of, let's say, creative environment that would provide you great content. Well, later on in this article, you can see how aggressive DEI programs might actually hurt that, and why Disney might actually want to shed that just to avoid that. It says here in the Harvard Business Review, they wrote that mandatory diversity workshops covering microaggressions or white privilege can make dominant groups feel like they're being singled out for censure and serve to, quote, activate bias or spark a backlash in the workplace. Jenna Robinson, president of Martin Center, an academic think tank, said DEI teams stoked divisions and animosity in America's offices and have become, quote, just another form of administrative bloat. It makes perfect sense when you're going into a recession that DEI teams are going to be the first to be laid off. So it's
coming.
It's coming, right? And it's quite interesting. I don't like to see anybody cast aside, let's say, but at the same time, I mean, if the workplace is maybe negatively impacted, because of some aggression of these individuals and starting their programs and so forth, if they're a drag on the company line, let's say, as is maybe the case as noted in this article, cuts are going to be made. That 7,000 is going to come from somewhere.
Right.
Will it actually impact these departments? We'll actually see. I believe weren't we hearing reports that a final let's say a final list of who might be impacted might be coming in the coming weeks? I guess we'll just
that's what we heard. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah. And look, these companies, including Disney, now have cover to cut these divisions, right? Like, if the economic conditions weren't the way they are right now, it would be a lot harder for a Bob Iger to go in there and be like, we're going to cut Reimagine Tomorrow. But because of the economy, because of the problems going on, he has cover now to cut that team and go, well, I don't want to do it, but I have to, right? So I'm telling you, the cuts are happening and things are changing. The pendulum is swinging. And Dre and I, we talked about this a lot. The pendulum is definitely swinging. And the Hollywood of 2 and 3 years ago is completely different than the Hollywood that we're going to see in 2 and 3 years from now. And a lot of people, I get it. They get like, oh man, Strange World was woke or Proud Family's woke. You have to understand that those movies and those TV shows are products of 3 and 4 years ago. These things are in the pipeline for years. So when you're watching a Strange World or you're watching a Proud Family, that's content that was really kind of created in 2019 and 2020. That's not 2023 content, So people have to understand that. So understand that we're going into like 2025, 2026, 2027. The content's going to look a lot different. Mark my words. Mark my words.
Yes. I think content's going to look a lot different. It's going to be interesting to see how the Disney company actually pivots, whether it be because of DEI programs that are cut, or maybe that accountability question, right? You're going to have to make it a profit, and I think one of the best ways to do that is to make universally beloved films. You know, if
You have
you
to.
go out of your way to push certain segments away or whatever, which is never good. I don't care if it's, you know, if you're pushing out
Left or
right,
right.
left, black, white. I don't care. I mean, you know, Disney creates four quadrant storytelling. And as soon as you start pushing people away, that's a problem. Well, then that's going to diminish your box office return, and well, that might impact your job. So these things are going to be crucial coming up in the coming days. We'll see. We'll see. You know, they're Disney likes to view itself as a progressive company. That's for
They
sure.
do.
You know, they're still going forward with the Splash Mountain stuff, and you know, that's got its own interesting little quirks, right? The co-op thing, and we're not going to be basing it on the franchise. We're going to have this kind of what do they call it, next chapter story or whatever that we're going to be
Yeah.
including there, and it's very convoluted. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Well,
But things are changing, especially in society, as we've noted, OG, privately. Right? We've had some certain Supreme Court decisions. We've had some certain elections, and we've had certain things that have happened. You know, because of, let's say, this culture war. That now you have the media, like I brought up before. The media starting to kind of, you know, let's say, absorb and depict. Right? They're like, well, things are changing. It's a very interesting time for sure.
it is, and you know, it's funny. Like you brought up a good point. I'm glad you brought this up because Disney likes to kind of portray itself as a progressive company. And a lot of people actually, I mean, a lot of people believe it too. Like, oh, well, they're really progressive. They have this agenda. I actually, and this might be an unpopular opinion, I actually don't think they have an agenda. I think it's all money driven. I think they see woke as trendy in the United States, and they're going to push woke in the United States because they feel like that's going to make money. If you look at how they market films in China, they throw the woke stuff out the window so fast. They don't care at all. I mean, it's a complete 180 from how they market films out here. Kind of shows you Disney's all about the dollar and not so much about the ideology, because once when the time comes to market a film in an area that they know that stuff isn't going to sell, they dump it real fast. They dump it real fast.
Well, when they had dollars to burn, they were a lot more, you know, on board with this stuff, right? Now when they don't, it's like, ooh, I don't know, accountability, guys. Like we gotta rein these in. We gotta make money back.
Right, exactly. And then like full disclosure, like in 2016, I was a total Bernie bro, right? I was all in on Bernie Sanders. That was my boy. I love Bernie, right? So I was following that election very closely. I was rooting for Bernie. And in that election, I mean, because Bob Iger right now is seen as like super lefty, right? Back then he really wasn't though. Back then he was kind of like more like this like moderate Democrat. He was all in on like Hillary Clinton. Right. And he was kind of going to war with Bernie. I remember all the arguments back and forth about like Iger kind of calling out Bernie, like, how many jobs have you created? And Bernie talking crap to Iger about like, you're not paying your people enough. And there was a lot of back and forth, a lot of animosity there. Iger was not seen as a far lefty back then. And all of a sudden, once it became trendy to kind of go further left, suddenly Bob Iger's like all about it, you know? So it just kind of shows you how kind of these things evolve based on what's hot at the moment. And I'm telling you, we're getting out of that phase right now. The pendulum is swinging, and you're going to see that Iger and the company go in the whatever the new trend is going to be the new thing that they're going to do. My opinion, and I could be totally wrong. Hey, look, I've done it before. I've been wrong. I've had to eat crow. In 2 years from now, who knows? I might have to be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I totally shit the bed on that one, didn't I? You never know. Well, that's how I feel, you know.
It's an interesting thing that happened there, because you had a very, in order to provide a little bit more context, right? You had a very, let's say, establishment-oriented figure against an anti-establishment-oriented figure.
Right.
They definitely clashed, right? Bernie was almost he would be considered a left-leaning populist at that time, right? And unfortunately, that whole thing was co-opted by a force or two, and now a lot of people feel like they're politically homeless, and that was a very interesting thing to see where people kind of fell into after that. But yeah, I mean, you know, I think yeah, I just think the fighters in this, you know, they're a little tired.
They're
They're a little
worn.
worse for wear, right?
Oh yeah.
Whereas you do have some people coming into the fight that maybe you didn't expect, and because of that, now it's like, you know, as a Disney company who's looking to, like I said, I quoted that poll again earlier, right? Who's looking to appeal towards as many demographics broadly as they possibly can. Maybe it's like, ooh, man, we might have to adjust our methodology in order to maybe key in on the trend that is changing out in the marketplace.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And I do have some audio from Hillary Clinton talking about Bernie back in
Sure.
2016.
Everything is proceeding.
I'm sorry, wrong audio. Sorry.
Oh man.
Oh,
Oh
God.
boy.
Yeah.
We could have a whole discussion about that, but you're gonna have to go to Rumble, folks, to actually hear
Yes.
that one.
Yes. That'll be a Rumble exclusive. Absolutely.
Sure.
But Dre, thank you, brother, for coming on, talking culture war. It's just, you know, I felt like this was an interesting topic right now because it does feel like we talked about in the lead in early on in the show how it's a fork in the road. Things are changing, things are evolving. So as we talked about, I mean, it really has. Things have changed, and I think it will continue to change. So I want to thank you, brother, for coming on. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, on the eve of a almost $2.3 billion success story that is Avatar: The Way of Water, a film that was, you know, really spoke to the human condition. I think Iger's looking at that as like, gotta get back to that. And so I think, you know, and maybe his viewpoint has maybe been altered. Maybe it's like, hey, let's bring it in here, guys. Let's go back to what we always did best, and that's probably the right call. Anyway, here's hoping. If you guys want to find me, you can go and do so right there at VashSky. Go ahead and type that in, it should pop up. And if you want to see me, that's on the channel you're watching right now. So please comment, subscribe below. It definitely helps us out. Share this if you like it, for sure. That helps us out as well.
Absolutely.
Turn on the bell for notifications. Comment below to, you know, give us your thoughts on all this, because I mean, we might be wrong here. We might have a completely a bad view of this. Please go ahead and correct us if you feel in the comments. If this is premiering in the chat, please, you know, do your thing. So I think that's it, good sir. I think we covered all.
Perfect. No, yeah, absolutely. And we will be recording with Mr. Jay Shear later tonight. I'm not sure if that video is going to premiere tonight or tomorrow. It depends on how long we go with him. But he just got back from the Disneyland resort, and he's got some opinions on it. And it's going to be it's going to be a hot one. It's going to be a hot one. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. So look for that either tonight or early tomorrow morning. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.